folks. Max Volume here. I'd like to explain a little bit about horn balancing, and apologies to those who already know all about this. When you've got control surfaces like elevators and ailerons and rudder, when you're pushing against the wind, it's nice to have a little bit of help. So the horn balance comes around forward of the pivot point in order to relieve some of the force of pushing against the wind. So, on with the movie.
The Avro 527. In the course of a lecture, The History and Evolution of the Avro Training Machine, delivered to the Institution of Aeronautical Engineers on 9th January, 1925, Mr. R.J. Parrott said, "We made the final effort to resurrect it, the Avro 504, as a fighter by fitting it with a 150 horsepower Sunbeam engine and equipping it with guns. The combination was quite good, and as far as I can recollect, it had a top speed of about 103 miles per hour, but rather a poor climb. I think the type might have been further developed if it had been pushed. The services could not be convinced that the machine was adequately strong when fitted with such a large engine, and I must confess that we ourselves thought we were very daring." The aircraft in question was the Avro 527, a two-seater powered by a 150 horsepower Sunbeam Nubian engine that was designed in December 1915. Its Avro 504 ancestry was proclaimed by the mainplanes, undercarriage, and tail unit, incorporating the fin and plane rudder of the Avro 504B. The lower wings were cut away at the roots to improve the pilot's downward vision. In the design of its fuselage, the Avro 527 differed markedly from its predecessors. The pilot sat well aft, in line with the trailing edge of the lower wings. The observer's cockpit, a short distance further aft, had a form of pillar mounting for a single Lewis gun. Despite its naval-type fin and rudder, the Avro 527 was built for the Royal Flying Corps. It was reported to be at Farnborough on the 13th of February, 1916. And was still there in mid-May. It seems to have been abandoned soon after that date, no doubt because the Sopwith 1.5 strutter was in prospect. The Avro 530. The Avro 530 represented a breakaway from the basic Avro 504 design. It was a two-seat fighter designed in 1916 and had several advanced features. Cleanliness of design and the crew's field of view had been carefully considered. There was a large spinner on the air screw and a central aperture to admit air into the radiator. The undercarriage V-struts were faired over. The main attachment point of the upper center section was a central pylon, which housed within its fairing the pilot's fixed Vickers gun. There were 4 small stays connecting the center section to the upper longerons. The fuselage was deep, and the pilot sat with his eyes level with the upper wing. The observer's cockpit was a short distance aft. The staggered wings had rounded tips and were of Royal Aircraft Factory 14 section. The entire trailing portion of each wing inboard of the aileron was movable and acted as a variable camber device. It was actuated by a wheel in the cockpit. An alternative set of wings, of Royal Aircraft Factory 15 section, and having no variable camber flaps, was made for comparative trials. The girder work in the ribs was made of aluminum in place of the more conventional plywood. The design of the fin and rudder underwent modification. Originally, a small fin and plain rudder were fitted. A later design had a horn-balanced rudder that blended with the outline of the fin. All surviving photographs depict the form illustrated, with the rudder balance above the fin. Construction of the Avro 530 was undertaken at the Manchester works of the A.V. Rowe & Company Limited. Official serial numbers were allotted for 2 Avro 530s. Components of the first aircraft were sent to Hamble on 3rd May 1917 for assembly, but it appears that it was not completed until July 1917. Performance proved to be good, but the Avro 530 was unable to improve significantly on the speed and climb of the contemporary Bristol F2A, which was already in production and under further development, and was a better all-around aircraft. The Avro 530 suffered from the further disadvantage of having the engine that was the standard power unit of the SE-5A, and, in 1917, was wanted almost exclusively for that aircraft. There was, in fact, little prospect of production, even before the first aircraft flew, for an official record dated 9th May 1917 noted against the Avro 530, owing to present development at the front, type not likely to be required in quantity. Machine should be flying very shortly. The type was not completely abandoned, however. In 1918, an Avro 530, possibly the second aircraft, was fitted with a 200 horsepower Sunbeam Arab engine, perhaps to act as a flying test bed. In this form, the aircraft had a modified undercarriage. Wider V-struts without fairings were fitted. Their forward legs met the fuselage nearer the nose. The flapless Royal Aircraft Factory 15-section wings with long-span ailerons were fitted, and the fin was extended forward. No further development of the aircraft was then possible, for the Arab was beset by many difficulties. The Avro 531 Spider. The Avro 531 was a single-seat fighter that was designed by Roy Chadwick to test his theory relating to maneuverability. He believed it should be possible to design an aircraft that was fairly stable, had a rigid structure and powerful, well-harmonized controls, and was yet maneuverable. To this end, he designed a small sesquiplane. The chord of the upper wing was 6 feet. Of the lower, 2 feet 6 inches. The wing structure was braced by a Warren girder system of V-struts. Each V-strut consisted of 2 faired steel tubes, and there were neither landing nor flying wires. Wing spars and fuselage members were spruce, and the airframe was fabric covered. To speed the completion of the prototype, and to facilitate production, several Avro 504 components were embodied in the Avro 531. And the entire forward fuselage was identical to that of the 504K. The upper wing was mounted close to the fuselage and directly above the cockpit. The pilot sat in a central aperture in the wing, which was level with his eyes. His field of vision was therefore excellent. Ailerons were fitted to the upper wing only. The rudder was a scaled-down replica of the 504. Nicknamed Spider, the Avro 531 was built as a private venture. It appeared in April 1918. In its original form, it had the 110 horsepower Laron engine that had been borrowed for that purpose, presumably from 504K production. Its maneuverability amply vindicated its designer's beliefs. In mock combat, it outmaneuvered standard contemporary scouts. Performance was good, but not significantly better than that of the Camel, which was then in quantity production. On several counts, the Spider earned the commendation of all who flew it. It was viceless and light on the controls. Its cockpit was roomy and comfortable. The disposition of the Vickers gun and ammunition box was good. But the Spider was not ordered officially. By the time it appeared, other, more advanced designs were in production. It was flown with a 130 horsepower Clerget engine, and the installation of a 150 horsepower Bentley rotary was projected. At one stage, a modified engine cowling with external stiffening ribs was fitted. An alternative version with 2 bay wings of equal chord, 4 feet 4 inches, having conventional wire bracing and ailerons on upper and lower wings, was designed, originally with the type number 531A. In this variant, the cockpit was immediately behind the rear spar of the center section, which was designed as a completely open structure. This design was built in 1919 as the Avro 538, powered by a 150 horsepower Bentley BR1 with a civil identity of K132. Later, GEACR was used as the personal transport by J.C.C. Taylor on his duties in connection with the Avro Transport Company's fleet of joy-riding Avro 504Ks. It survived only until September 1920.
One last point before we go. Ray Chadwick, who designed the Avro 531 Spider, went on in the next World War to design the Avro Lancaster, a very famous aircraft. So, until next time.